Hi RARs, today we're back with another video in the amazing series Taking Over the Globe, How RAR Makes Money. And today we're going to be discussing not necessarily my philosophy, well actually I will be discussing what I think is going to happen, but we won't be discussing specific investments necessarily, but we're going to be discussing probably the key dominating factor in today's economy, and that is inflation. And that is why we are calling this the Great Inflate. So there's a lot that I could say about inflation. In fact, we're going to be looking at all of these different tabs, very scary. Honestly, I probably chose too many, but I guess we'll start with the background. I've explained this before, but all the world banks, all the governments in the world love printing extra money, and there's no exception basically. I'm in the United States, so I'm going to focus more on the Federal Reserve, which is our bank in the United States. It's the central bank, which is basically the bank that controls everything. But every country pretty much has their own central bank. And what central banks do is they manipulate the economy by setting the interest rates, and they can also buy whatever they want. Basically, they can print money and buy whatever they need. So setting interest rates, you guys that's a little bit confusing, but basically you know what interest rates are, right? It's the price of lending. It's basically how much it costs for you to borrow something, right? So let's say you want to borrow money to buy a car, buy a house, all these things. The government really controls how much that costs. And basically they can make it really expensive. They can raise the rate at which it costs to borrow things. Like let's say the rate is 5%. And if they don't want people to buy as much stuff, they can raise that rate to like 10%. And then less people can buy stuff, right? Because the interest rate's higher. That means it costs more to buy things because you have to borrow if you're borrowing to get them. And basically that tells you to stop borrowing and save your money instead. Or they can lower rates to like 0%, which is actually where they technically are currently. And then it basically doesn't cost anything to borrow. So everyone's going to borrow their money and buy a bunch of stuff. So currently they have kept what we call the Fed funds rate, which is the main rate of the economy in the United States, at 0%. So this means that banks can basically borrow money for nothing, if I recall that correctly, or at least they can borrow money from each other at no rate. Now, honestly, I'm still a little bit confused with how the whole thing works. It's very strange. The point is we can't get that rate. That's reserved for the banks. We can't get 0% rates. If we get out a mortgage here, it's a lot higher than that, but it's still pretty low, right? And the thing is all these rates are correlated. If the government raises their rates, then the rates for the 30-year mortgage will also go up. And they go up and down together. Okay, you can just see whatever the rates are, whatever, 2 point something percent. The point is they're pretty low. And the other thing the Federal Reserve does is they print money like this. So this is called their balance sheet, and it sounds really smart. It's like, oh my gosh, the Federal Reserve is so rich. But they have the ability to create money out of thin air. So actually, it's not very impressive when you can just print money out of nowhere. I mean, I guess they can have 8 trillion if they want. I mean, they could have 100 trillion if they wanted. And maybe they could print out a Googleplex if the computing systems will allow them to. But anyways, this tracks how much money they've printed over time. So up until coronavirus, which was around, let's just put that at the start of 2021, they had printed around 4.5 trillion, something like that. But then they decided to put in an overdrive, right? As you can notice here, they were at 4.1, 4.2, and then the printing went like crazy, and it continues to go day by day. I mean, they print around over 100 billion a month, which is pretty exciting. But basically all they do is they buy government debt. So what they're really doing is allowing the government to print money out of nowhere, but they've created this indirect system of creating what's called the balance sheet to print and buy more government debt. So really, this is a good way of confusing people that aren't in finance, because you're probably like, what is the balance sheet? Well, what is all this stuff? Just understand this is how much money the government is printing. And so as you can see, you're not a very responsible government, and it pretty much does not go down very often, and they've continued printing more. They don't want to stop because they need to monetize the national debt. But of course, when you're printing all this money, that's going to cause there to be a lot of inflation. And I guess the easiest way to track this is if we look at how much the money supply is growing. And money supply is basically all the money that's in the system. It's like the money in your bank accounts, the money that's in short-term savings. As you can see here, it just goes up an insane amount. I mean, what is it going up yearly? It's probably going up like 20% yearly now. So, it was that much, 18 trillion, and who knows? Okay, there's too many charts here. This is not very organized. The point is, it's causing a lot of inflation. Even the government admits that the cost of living is going up. So as you can see here, this is what they're claiming is the actual CPI, but this is what the government likes using. The problem is that it really understates what real inflation is. So if we take a look, now it's claiming there's a 6.8% inflation rate. And, I guess that is sort of a record high in what, 30 years or so? Or is it 40 years? Yeah, it's like 40 years actually. But that's actually not really how high it is, because they found ways to sort of deflate the inflation and make it not seem as bad as it does in their statistics. So what I want to do here actually is really show what the actual rate of inflation is, because the thing is, or the increase in cost of living, because the thing is, people on both sides will overhype it, and the government's going to try to say it's as low as possible, but there is definitely a lot of alarmism on the other side where they try to pretend it's like, the end of the world. So I'm going to try to look at as many things as we can to determine what it actually might be. But first I want to go to the alarmists on the other side, and that is the people at Shadow Stats. So these guys claim that they are calculating the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, fairly. They're claiming that this is what the real rate of inflation would be if the government was being honest. Maybe that's correct, but I think it's not hard to deny that it completely overstates what the increase in the cost of living has been, because it claims that, a few years ago that we were having 6% increases in our cost of living. And I mean, that just wasn't true. Now, I mean, the government was understating it, but they weren't understating it by 4% a year. I mean, they maybe were understating it by 2% a year, maybe 1% a year. So the problem is these people, it's not easy to be honest. They have to be alarmist about it. And, now they're claiming that that prices are going up around 15%, which actually isn't that unreasonable. The problem is when you take a look at these other years, like all these other years, it claims that it's been going up, 10%, in the years between 2010 and 2020. And, it just wasn't doing that. So, I mean, they should be paying attention. But how much are prices going up? Well, let's try to figure this out with our trusty internet. So, I guess here's a bunch of places that people went out to see the price of things. And, I mean, hopefully this is a reliable source, because, again, who knows? I trust nobody. But, it's just putting some stats on how much things go up. Like, someone saw bread went up bread went 25% up. Let's see, a gallon of milk went up around 15%. A dozen eggs went up 20%. As you can see here, a lot of things seem to have gone up 20%, 10%. Again, it depends on the product, right? Some things just went up a few percent. But of course, everything went up because they just printed a bunch of money. So that's some items. Now here's the stuff that actually went up a lot. So if we go to the things that have really been going crazy, this is the funny, gasoline prices have just completely gone ballistic. So if you drive a car, then I guess tough luck. I am definitely feeling the pain when I go to the pump and they charge me those extra few pennies a gallon. I just can't believe it. So as you can see here, that's really probably what's gone up the most. Oil. In fact, crude oil in general has just gone up like a crazy amount. Here's a chart of that too. So where were we at? We were at $50 just about a year ago, and now we're over 75. So it's a pretty high increase in the cost of oil. And the thing is, oil is used to get energy for everything, so that pretty much makes everything more expensive. So as you see here, everyone's talking about inflation projections, but okay, whatever. They have no clue what they're talking about, because only I know what's going on in the future. They can only tell you what happened in the past. But another thing that has gone up, and actually the question is, what is the solution to things going up? Well, actually, it's just to buy a bunch of stuff that will continue going up with inflation. So ideally, I mean, if you can buy things that won't deteriorate, I mean, that's great, because they're just going to be more expensive next year. And one thing that people do for that is real estate, right? So take a look at these homes here. They've gone up almost 20% in 1 year, which is quite a bit. And they think they're going to go up another 15% in the next year. That actually seems feasible. I probably would agree with that forecast. I mean, it'll probably be something around that. Because again, if there's more money in the system, then everything, like houses, will be more expensive. Because rents have also gone up over 15% a year. And that means houses should go up too, because you can make more money off of them. So that's one way you can try to make money off of this. Okay, I also wanted to show some other numbers. Here we go. So I don't know. I'm sure everyone's getting bored of these numbers, but whatever. Again, I want to be completely objective in showing a lot of different things. I'm not just going to show all the things that went up in price and ignore everything that went down, because that would be, dishonest. And of course, RAR is very honest, right? Haha. Okay. So here is the price of lumber. So look at this. Well, it just shows you the percentage went up. So up 255% in the past 3 years, which is a pretty big increase. That's why everything is expensive now. You can't build a home without, paying all your money. The price of corn, that is up 60% in the last 3 years. So I guess that means no more barbecues, which is fine with me, honestly. And let's see, the price of cattle. Well, actually, this one did not go up as much, right? So 13%, that's really not that extreme. I mean, it's some inflation, but not that bad. Same with chicken, right? Chicken went up maybe like what, 10, 15% in the last 3 years. I mean, I guess that's too bad, but maybe they'll just cut the size of the chicken so we can eat an equal number. And what is the price here? The price of hogs have gone up how much? Okay, what, 30% in the last 3 years? Although this graph is like glitching on me. The point is everything goes up, but of course a lot of things went up like crazy. Other things did not go up too much. But I would still say overall, in my opinion, probably the cost of living, inflation is around 15%. I think that's about correct. And the thing is, it's only going to continue, right? Because next year, everything will just keep going up in price. Wages will go up. I mean, the cost of everything will continue going up. And that is why we are investing, or at least RAR invests, to prevent itself from getting hurt by that. In fact, the goal is for us to benefit from what I call the great inflate, right? So how do we do this? Well, we've talked about it in our other videos, right? There's the stock market and also in cryptocurrencies, right? So cryptocurrencies are a pretty easy way to hedge because there's only so many Bitcoins and there's an infinite amount of dollars. So that means hopefully Bitcoin continues to go up and the dollar will not. Now you can also get gold. That's then the classic way, right? Because again, same thing with gold. There's like a limited supply of gold. And stop advertising yourself, Business Insider. And you know, gold maybe hasn't done extremely well, but at least because you can't just print more gold, unlike dollars. The idea is that if you buy some, it will go up in price. Now, it might go up in price. I don't know. So you could buy a lot of different things. You can even buy stocks, right? Because stocks, at least when the prices, they can raise their prices, right? If you own Apple and then there's inflation, Apple will just raise their prices. So they don't mind it. They'll just get super rich off of it. And that pretty much applies to most companies. They just raise their prices to deal with inflation. So the key thing here, though, is to not hold your money in your bank account or in cash, right? This is why RAR pays its prizes in crypto, right? That way, if you just don't do anything with your money, at least you're not losing it, right? This is why it's so important. I really encourage people to receive their prizes in Bitcoin, because if I pay you in cash, right, then you keep your money in the bank account, and then every year it loses its value, right? So maybe 1 year you could buy, I don't know, 10 pieces of gum or something, because I'm sure that's what you're doing with it. And the next year you can only buy 8, right? That's not very fun. So again, this is why you don't want to keep whatever you own, you know, euros, rupees, who knows, do not hold them in your bank account. You want to get it somewhere. You want to own assets. You want to own things. You don't want to own cash, because in the end, cash is just worthless, right? You want to own something that's not going to decrease in value, guaranteed. So yeah, that's why I'm mentioning a lot of these things. I mean, there are so many. Cryptos are fun. I mean, gold is, I guess, reasonable. Stocks are reasonable. Real estate is reasonable if you happen to have hundreds of thousands, which I'm sure all of you guys do. That's why you're watching me, so I can pay you 20 cents, because I'm sure you have millions. And speaking of that, how about for our comment today? You guys can just comment, great inflate gate. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I hope that's not too obvious for the non-commenters. Well, my concern is that some of these people that aren't commenting, they're just going to look for some comments, and then they're going to figure out the comment without watching the video. And I mean, I'm sure you guys would never do that, right? But either way, that was a short primer. Okay, it wasn't that short, on the inflation facing the world and what we are trying to do about it, which is actually just encourage it to continue and then invest and make money off of it. So I am rooting for the great inflate to continue, and I'm sure all of you are also, because that is what's going to help RAR. But there is one thing that is going to do even better and go higher than inflation, and that is the rate of increase in classic RAR's members. So as you can see here, you know, we've already gone from 0 to 9,600 in less than a year. That's an infinite rate of increase. So no matter how much inflation goes up, it will never have anything on classic RAR. So your best investment is to continue sticking with RAR and to continue amassing power and wealth while you root us to take over the world, or root for us, right? So thanks for your loyalty, and I will see you next time.